Okay, now we move on to our media picks for the month, and you've already hinted at your media pick in a previous segment in terms of
Yes.
the use of artifacts and telling of stories and this kind of thing. And actually, with that in mind, I would like to invite you to share your media pick first this month, because I'm going to act as the attorney for the defence.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. My media pick for the month is on the satirically named History Channel, and it is a new series set in
Uh-huh.
the UK
Yep.
called River Hunters.
Yeah. Where they hunt.
Hashtag River Hunters.
Where they hunt rivers. Exactly.
Well, no, they hunt in rivers.
Oh, they hunt in rivers. Okay, so
Yeah,
they
basically,
are they
it's
fishing?
well, I'll read you the publicity blurb from the history website. It
Okay.
says River Hunters pairs US YouTube sensation Beau Wimet, a river detectorist with over 30 years' experience, with presenter and keen swimmer Rick Edwards, as they search the UK's waterways for archaeological finds. Using state-of-the-art technology, archive maps, and contemporaneous accounts from the period, Beau and Rick perform the first underwater archaeological digs in some of the most exciting and iconic historical sites in Britain, often in dangerous and fast-flowing water. It is absolute bollocks. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
oh,
It is. I'm sorry to be so blunt, but
oh.
you've got if you remember the publicity shots of the series that shall not be named, Marty Woodingers, you had the guys posing in their combats with
Yeah,
their metal detectors.
yeah, yeah.
Well, here we've got you guys posing in their wetsuits with their metal
No, I know,
detectors.
but you're being a little you're jumping. So okay, right. So I'm on the website as well, and it says here features the Battle of Newark Castle and the River Trent, and in that photo there's a third person, and that third person sadly he's not mentioned as in the cast list, but he is a friend of mine, and he's been so pleased with being involved in this TV series because I think he's had quite a good experience, it seems anyway, and that is Gary Bankhead. He's a wonderful archaeologist based at the University of Durham. I think he, if not, has or is about to do PhD, linked with some river archaeology that he's been doing in the river that flows through the city of Durham, where he's found all manner of fascinating stuff. I think he might have found something of mine, actually. I once threw something off one of the bridges in that city. But anyway,
I don't think we should go there.
that's a long story. I'm not going to go into that.
No. Are the police still looking for it?
No, they're not. And all I will say is it's not the pair of false teeth he found. It's but the point is that he is a serious archaeologist, and he's been doing in very difficult conditions actually, because once you're in most of these rivers, visibility is low. You're basically hunting around with fingertip searches. Maybe if you're lucky, a little bit of sediment removal. So, the point is it's somewhere halfway between, I suppose, a test pit, I guess you could say, and a full underwater archaeological excavation where they have scuba gear and everything. Because actually, he does dive with the gear and that kind of thing. So he's a fireman. He's got a glorious smile, a wonderful family, and I adore the man. I have a slight man crush, actually, I have to say. He's a wonderful, wonderful man, and it's such a shame that this has come to your attention in this way. I mean, have you caught any of the episodes? Have you managed to sort of to review them?
Yes, I have.
Oh,
And,
okay.
and in fact, I'm specifically talking about the second episode, which is about the Battle of Tewkesbury and the River Avon, where they also looked outside Warwick Castle in the English Midlands. So I watched that last night so that it was fresh in my mind for the recording today.
Uh-huh.
And I'm sorry, what it is. I'm not going to cast any aspersions on Gary's
Gary.
contribution,
Mm-hmm.
because the archaeologists involved do what they do,
Yeah.
but the package they've been placed in by the production company is that classic American-derived, cheap and cheerful, what they call muscular storytelling, where they have two characters who play the leads who go on a quest to find stuff.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
And that's the format. It's lazy, it's derivative, and some of it is actually inept. Last night, the thing that finished it off for me last night was in the sequence where they're the two leads, and I'll call them leads because they've got nothing to offer in terms of historical insight or anything like that. The two leads are fishing for stuff in a tributary of the Severn at Tewkesbury, and one of as I put it on Twitter last night, the American one, this guy from YouTube,
right? Yeah.
Bo. And let's name and shame the guilty. Pulls out now from the fact that it's already empty of silt and so on suggests that it had already been found, and then they recreated the finding.
Okay. Yeah.
A British World War II tin hat helmet.
Right. Right.
Which had clearly been in the water for some time. It was rusty. Some of the metal parts of the strap, the webbing strap, were still there. It is quite clearly a British World War II tin hat, Mark II tin hat.
Right.
Absolutely iconic stuff.
So
Point is.
Could I just say,
Yeah.
Just for clarification, would they be similar at all to the types? When you say a Mark II tin hat, were they sort of those slightly domed with the
That's right. The kind of stuff you see the guys also wearing in the First World War. This was the slightly updated version that was issued for the first half of the Second World War.
Yeah, okay, I know what you mean. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Not only did neither of the two leads identify this thing, the post-production commentary then started talking about GIs who were based in the area during World War II, and then showed film of American GIs wearing completely different kit, including a completely different steel helmet.
Right. Okay.
They did not even, and even at the end of the show when they did up some of the archaeologists, they didn't identify what it was.
So they had a narrative agenda, and this was
for the American audience.
In the loosest way, was serving that agenda.
Yeah. They found a British object, but they slanted it for an American audience by talking about GIs for which there was actually no evidence within the program.
Right. I see. Yeah. Okay.
It was just lazy and derivative and awful.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, that's a real shame. But as you say, it is his. I guess it's the satirically named History Channel, and what else do we expect? But poor Gary. I love the man, I really do, and in that sense, it's probably good that he's not named in the cast.
But then you see, it gives you an idea of how seriously the historical content is actually being taken.
Yeah. Well, and actually. Yeah, I won't name names, but earlier this month I passed to you a copy of a document that a colleague was sent to be a talking head on an upcoming TV show. I also sent you a link to a concept trailer, both of which looked extremely, well, just a bit cheesy actually, and relying on old stories told in slightly new ways. My friend and colleague's concern was that he wouldn't have any control over how he was edited and how that stuff would be used. And actually, what's actually quite cool though is that he was able to, through this conversation that we had, and we suggested, you and I, and also someone else that I consulted with, we passed this feedback back to him, and he was actually able to get the production company to agree that I almost said his name there, that my friend would be able to have say on the final edit. And I think it's that kind of thing that increasingly has to be important. I mean, in the context of, because it was last month, wasn't it, that we were talking about historians fighting back. It was the headline, fighting back against production companies who just raid their work to create their own dramatic narrative for television purposes, and I think
not paying them for it.
Well, indeed, and not paying for them for it. And so whether it is that you get an agent, like for example, Nigel Hetherington is a very well known example of that, or whether you simply are just very savvy when you're approached. I guess this sort of TV series really highlights the risks, I guess, involved in being associated with it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, very much so.
Okay. Well, my media pick for the month is something that I like that you didn't know what it was. I mentioned this to you off camera before, and you're like, "What is
Yes.
that?" And you were like, "Am I behind the curve on this?" It is in fact a short film called, or a documentary called Behind the Curve, that's currently screening on Netflix, and I'll put a link to its IMDb page just below. It was published last year, or certainly on the IMDb page. It's got a date of 2018, but I watched it a couple of days ago based on various colleagues suggesting that I really should, and it was all about the flat Earth community, and it revolved around one person in particular, a guy called Mark Sargent, who is one of the generalissimos of this movement. There were three main people identified, and Mark didn't get on very well with one of these three. It's
Splitters.
Yeah, splitters. Yeah, was it the United People's Front and the People's Front of so there was a little bit of that going on, but what this documentary highlighted was, first of all, it was very easy because actually my lovely wife was she was doing some craft work, and she was listening as I was watching it, and she just kept on just throwing up her hands and exasperated. How could these people think this? How could And so on the one hand, you had this surface level element of everyone look and point and laugh at the flat Earth people. But then there was another element whereby, and actually I really came to have a lot of sympathy with this. That's not to say that I'm a flat earther now, but rather a lot of sympathy with the fact that these people are deeply curious, and often they feel very isolated. And this is something that the film highlights very well. It doesn't make them out to be sad individuals, or strange human cases. They're just like me, actually, curious and maybe a little bit socially awkward, because obviously this camera bravado that I put on isn't me, really.
Likewise.
Well, indeed, exactly.
Yeah.
And actually, there was a chap who was speaking at a conference to NASA colleagues, who said what these people represent are missed opportunities to get a new scientist, a curious mind interested in actual experimentation and the simple pathway of the scientific method. Because, and I really would recommend that if you can check this out, because it highlights that the people who are interested in flat Earth, they consider themselves to be skeptical, and they consider themselves to be conducting experiments. The problem is, though, is that they're conducting experiments to prove something they've already made their mind up on.
Yeah.
Whereas actual scientific method may well have a hypothesis, but that hypothesis will be mercilessly thrown to the ground if it's shown to be not true, or if it's shown to not actually match up with the evidence. And it's just that instead of turning left they turn right, or instead of turning right they turn left at that crucial point following the experiment, you see. And so for me, I came away from this, initially I was watching it fully expecting it to be something that I would be laughing at, and I did. Yeah, there were some moments where my jaw hit the floor at like, oh, what you say, but in a very real way. I think this says a lot about how a whole segment of society has been quite possibly let down by their educational system, and they go looking for answers with the same energy that I do, but sadly they're looking for them in I won't say the wrong places, because that just feeds into the narrative, but rather in places that aren't bounded by rules and by a structure that's designed to hone in and trim away the fat of a ever sharper emergent truth known as scientific method.
That is really interesting. I mean, this is an area I guess I've always been interested in. The idea, the people who believe these mythologies, effectively, for whatever reason, and then particularly since I did the Burma Spitfires project in 2012, 2013, where I looked and read a lot of papers about the psychology of belief, and how some psychologists argue, for example, that there is a portion of the population that is for reasons that aren't fully understood, but more susceptible to taking on and then defending a belief in the light, even though it appears contrary to any objective evidence.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There's a certain emotional investment, isn't there, where
yes,
you feel the need to defend what you think of as an idea that can't defend itself.
Absolutely, it's interesting. I remember when I was working on the Burma project, people who believed in the story would say, by taking on the scientific method, we were somehow betraying the project. And I said, and I'd have to explain. Look, no. The point is, you've got a hypothesis. Our method is to test the hypothesis to destruction, and if we destroy it, we have to come up with a new hypothesis, like as you've just explained.
Yeah.
And in that case, that's I think what we did. But
and also it's worth saying because again that sounds very emotive. Destroy the thing, but the point is that is how we get a safe medicine or a safe vehicle or a workable object. So
I was about to make the point about precisely that. I mean, before we started recording this morning, I was reading a Twitter thread where a scientist has come up with bullet points to argue against the anti-vax brigade. Why vaccinating your children is not just safer for them, it's safer for all of us.
For everyone, yeah. Herd
immunity and all those sorts of things. We are living in the number of books that have got post-truth in the title that are around at the moment and have been since 2016 when we had Brexit and Trump. There is a sense that the intellectual sands have shifted, and things that were taken for granted, like scientific method, trumps belief, coin a phrase, are up for grabs again in the wider society. And again, I don't want to bring it back to river hunters again, but
leave Gary alone. Leave him alone.
I'm not going to talk about Gary. No, the point about a show like that, it's first of all, the two leads are not the two leads taking part. Sorry, I bumped the computer there.
Yeah, getting passionate.
The two leads, yes, the two leads taking part aren't archaeologists. They don't have The producers think that the audience won't watch people who know what they're talking about describing these objects.
Yeah. Well, exactly, and I think that goes right to the core of so much of what we talked about just now with that series, but also so much of what we often revisit in these watching briefs is this sense that of course, if I use this, I talked very similarly with in a recent interview that I recorded. So I may be repeating myself for some people, but of course, if you just told me all that existed was Bakewell tart, I love Bakewell tart, and I'll only have Bakewell tart. But
Bakewell pudding.
Bakewell pudding, but crucially Bakewell pudding. Of course, that's the best version. Yes, of course. Sorry, what am I talking about? But it takes a foodie, it takes an expert to then introduce. Well, actually, if you pair that with some of this ice cream, it's even better. And if you precede that with a lovely roast, and I will stuff my face with Bakewell pudding to no end if that's the only choice I'm given. And I think producers often think, well, this works and it's well received, and therefore let's just keep on giving them the pudding. Whereas actually, a nice roast can go very well with that. A nice roast baked potato, even if you're a vegetarian, can go very well with that. It doesn't have to be what you've done before and what you've had before for it to be successful. And specifically when it comes to this particular Behind the Curve film, something else that was quite clear though is that lots of the people who are at the head of the flat Earth movement, they do buy into other conspiracy theories. They in fact at one point it's spoken about as though they shop around until they found the theory that they really wanted to push. So actually Mark Sargent had been a proponent of various other conspiracy theories, and he described it as he got to the end of the bookshelf, found flat Earth, and went, oh. And then he found a way. He found that gave him traction, as it were, as a voice in that world, and that of course can be a very attractive thing, but also as part of this, just as well, just you know. So in that sense, you can again use that element of being slightly dismissive of this tendency to just to defend the indefendable, or to defend conspiracy theories, or to look for the next one. But also, right at the end of the film, very pointedly, they show, and this isn't a spoiler, I won't spoil the exact nature of it, just in case you want to watch it at home, but they show an experiment happening. The experiment doesn't show that the Earth is flat, and then immediately someone says, oh, it must be, and they throw in a variable that actually has no bearing on this experiment. Again, it's to do with height, but basically the variable that they're talking about is not the same, wouldn't impinge on this height at all. But the point is, that's what scientific method dispels. It says, oh, we've got a result we weren't expecting, and it stops the guy in the middle saying, no, we can still hold on to the hypothesis. It must have been that there was a pig flying past, or something like that. It gets rid of that, and it asks the question, well, what does that result mean? And it's just, they get so close, and they are conducting these experiments with true true curiosity and to a certain extent scientific integrity. They spent in the movie $20,000 on a hypersensitive gyroscope at one point. Which sadly didn't. This isn't the same experiment. This is a different experiment, but it didn't give them the result. It was saying the Earth is moving as well, and that the Earth is round and it spins. Sorry, a sphere and it spins. And what they did was what the guy said was, and of course that was a problem. We've got a problem here. He didn't say, of course that was the result. Ergo, the idea is the problem. They're so close in terms of how scientific method works. And I really genuinely did not come away from this wanting to laugh and point or recommend it for a joke. I think I'm recommending this really as an insight into how close we all are, I think, to having honest questions take us down a path that ultimately never leads to an answer. That's part of the appeal of these things, is that actually they're not the end goal is never an answer. The end goal is simply to continue the mystery, because the mystery is actually quite an addictive element of inquiry, I think.
I think you're being a little bit narrow there by talking about the mystery. I think we can probably all think of the cases of archaeologists, including some very famous archaeologists, who held to theories that maybe they come up with or made their name with, which were subsequently proven to be less supportable than maybe they were once. I'm thinking. I mean, the obvious one is, Schliemann appears to have believed to the end of his days that he found the Troy of Homer, and he hadn't. No. But and more recently there've been other cases where academic feuds happen because some bright young thing comes up with the theory that knocks the professor of the department's book into the remainder cupboard,
I think
shelf.
The other day I shared an article on the Facebook page, which was someone was talking. It was an article examining the question of why people follow pseudoscientific ideas, and it resulted in this conversation. It was it was an interesting conversation, because the person I was talking with was saying, well, actually scientists are very dogmatic, and there's actually something that was in the Behind the Curve movie as well, this idea of scientists being intransigent in their beliefs. Once they think something is true, then they just hold on to it. And what was interesting is that I couldn't, as you say, I couldn't entirely argue against that, because there are scientists who do hold on too tightly to the idea. But I did explain that actually the whole point of scientific method is to hold on to your ideas lightly, and always be ready to let go of them. You know, and so with you with the Burma Spitfire situation, you know, you're holding on gently to that notion. Okay, maybe there's something here, and we're going to test it, and we're going to see what happens. But my personality, my ego, my self-worth, my family, my economic future is not tied up with this idea. And lots of people, again, they don't seem to quite understand that. For example, one of the complaints you often hear about climatologists is, oh well, of course they say global warming's real, they want to keep themselves in a job. And you're like, no, climatologists can study climate no matter what's happening to it.
Exactly.
It doesn't have to be global warming, they can just study the climate. It doesn't have, so and it's this idea that if you're saying something, that you have a monetary investment or a personal investment in it. And that's often actually what pseudoscience is. It is that. It's an intransigent fiefdom that's been created. Whereas actually proper scientific investigation it's like a butterfly. You're holding on to it and you're hoping it's real, but maybe it's not. And okay, well, on to the next one. And I think that's how we all try to behave as well as archaeologists, I think. Hopefully.
Yes, I think you're right. It's funny. As you were saying that, I was thinking back to my sort of first experience of looking at this stuff when I was actually at secondary school, and we were in our what was then called RE, religious education. But this was a very progressive school, and we talked about other things. And one of the things we looked at was Chariots of the Gods. And we looked at it from the point of view of, actually, this is a really bad book that where the so-called evidence is a collection of wishful thinking and deliberate misrepresentation, or just piss poor research. You know, and yet it's still in print. It's made Eric von Daniken a mint, and he still appears on Ancient Aliens.
Yeah, but again, it's funny actually, because that directly points to exactly what I was just saying in that sense, doesn't it? You know, it is the people who are actually making a lot of money out of an idea that you have to question. Then again, if you have a really good idea that works, it's also possible to make money. We shouldn't, you know, say the chemists are not. It's just one of the questions to ask is what is the reason behind this person saying this as well, you know, and is what they're saying testable? Can we test it?